Chapter 10, Zhao Tai Gate. Advantages outgrow disadvantages. The avenue between the main archway and the Zhao Tai Gate, number 4 on layout, is called the Imperial Carriage Pathway of Zhao Tai Gate. Being the gate of the entrance yard of the Yonghe Palace, Zhao Tai Gate lies at the end of the pathway, and it is 152 meters, which is not quite long. Now visitors can walk on it freely. However, in the Qing dynasty, this pathway was restricted to access. As the noble name Imperial Carriage Pathway or Imperial Carriage Road states, ordinary people were not allowed to walk on it but the emperor. When would the emperor utilize the pathway to take the walk? He would do 3 times on 3 special days respectively each year, and these activities were the obligation of the emperor. These 3 days were the 3rd day of the 1st lunar month, the summer solstice of the 5th lunar month, the 13th day of the 8th lunar month. These 3 days were the days on which the emperors visited the Yonghe Palace to worship the ancestors. Whom to worship? The Qianlong Emperor was to worship the Yongzheng Emperor, and the subsequent emperors of the Qianlong Emperor were to come to worship the Qianlong Emperor by saluting the portrait of the previous emperor. Yonghe Hall of Everlasting Protection, number 18 on layout, is the hall that the Qianlong Emperor came to worship the Yongzheng Emperor, as the portrait of the Yongzheng Emperor was hung in the Yonghe Hall. The succeeding emperors came to worship in the East Academy situated in the eastern loop of the original Yonghe Palace, which, as mentioned, was burnt down in 1900. As the portrait of the Qianlong Emperor was hung in the East Academy. Of the 3 days, the 3rd day of the 1st lunar month and the 13th day of the 8th lunar month were the death and the birthday of the Qianlong Emperor respectively, which is of nothing special to tell. The summer solstice of the 5th lunar month was the most distinctive day of the 3 days, on which the emperor came to the Yonghe Palace, since the summer solstice was the day for the emperor to worship the earth. The winter solstice is the day to worship the heaven, and the worship of the earth is in the Temple of Earth, which is situated in the due north of the Yonghe Palace. After the ritual of earth worship was over, the emperor wouldn't go back to the Forbidden City directly. Instead, he would move from the Earth Temple to the Yonghe Palace. With this movement, he would walk on the Imperial Carriage Pathway. So to summarize, the emperor must walk on the pathway on 3 days yearly, and then go to serve the new wheat as offerings to the Buddha image of each hall. Since it was a ritual to worship the earth, new wheat was naturally to be served. And then new wheat was also to be served as offerings to the image of the Yongzheng Emperor in the Yonghe Hall of Everlasting Protection, number 18 on layout. The succeeding emperors needed to serve the new wheat to the image of the Qianlong Emperor in the East Academy. This ritual was called Sacrifice of Seasonal Fresh Food, Chinese 建新礼, which had been taken up on the summer solstice each year. 建 literally means to offer. 新 contains 2 layers of meanings, newness and goodwill. After the sacrifice of seasonal fresh food, the emperor would have his meal in the East Academy. This very lunch on the summer solstice has a standard menu. The Yonghe Palace dragon whisker noodles, 龙须面 noodles as thin as dragon's whiskers, were made from the new wheat of that day exactly. Well, the emperors of the Qing dynasty would go to the Yonghe Palace to have the dragon whiskers noodles after the worship in the Temple of Earth every summer solstice. On the winter solstice, the emperor would return to the Forbidden City to have 8 treasure huntun, 八宝馄饨, after the heaven worship in the Temple of Heaven. As the emperors had been behaving routinely like this, The Manchu and the Eight Manners were chased accordingly. Thenceforth, all the citizens in Beijing followed the fashion trend as well. There has been a folk etymology around the saying of Beijing. Dumplings are eaten on the winter solstice, and the noodles are eaten on the summer solstice. The allusion indeed was derived from the East Academy of the Yonghe Palace. The noodles the emperor had were called dragon whisker noodles, also known as silver silk noodles, 银丝挂. However, as a matter of fact, they were neither as thin as dragon's whiskers nor silver silk, merely the name. From today's perspective, they don't fit the way as the name indicates, but they were at that time. The noodles we eat today are made from white flour. Well, what I ate in my childhood is standard flour, which is the black flour, unbleached flour. The flour production technology was worse in the Qing dynasty. The wheat flour was called fudi flour, which was ground by the stone mill. Whatever the fudi flour was manufactured in a fine way, like multi-turns of sieving and sifting. It was still blackish and thick. In other words, it was neither white nor fine. Moreover, this kind of flour was of poor elasticity and could not be stretched very long. It was not the quality made by a machine today, like standards of grinding in 400 mesh, 800 mesh, or 1500 mesh. The flour at that time just could not meet today's quality level. The best technology in the Qing dynasty was at most as good as the standard flour I ate when I was a child, namely the black flour. But that kind of noodles had been already thin like silver silk, though as thick as today's dried noodles. That thickness was great at that time, so the noodles made by which were called dragon whisker noodles. And the Yonghe Palace dragon whisker noodles owned an exclusive name, Beijing silver silk noodles, 银丝金挂. In the past, Beijing silver silk noodles were presented as a special gift of birthday noodles, which were regarded as gifts of high class. The 5 succeeding emperors of the Qianlong Emperor, Jiaqing, Daoguang, Xianfeng, Tongzhi, Guangxu, should worship the ancestors on these 3 days strictly every year, walk on the imperial carriage pathway, and then eat the noodles. At the end of the imperial carriage pathway is the front gate of the Yonghe Palace called Zhaotai Gate. Zhao means to demonstrate. Tai cannot be used arbitrarily. The name of Zhaotai Gate being applied to the front gate of the Yonghe Palace is to manifest Tai. The selection of the word Tai was adopted to the mausoleum of the Yongzheng Emperor, which is called Tailing, Ling Mausoleum, and the mausoleum of the Kangxi Emperor is called Jingling. Thus, the word Tai is consistent with the word selected for the tomb of the Yongzheng Emperor. Word selecting for the naming of the mausoleum is extremely important. According to the record of the Qing history, Southern Study offered 9 candidate words for the Yongzheng Emperor to select as the mausoleum naming for the Kangxi Emperor. The Yongzheng Emperor nibbled his finger and circled with his finger blood the word Jing. Hence, the mausoleum of the Kangxi Emperor was called Jingling. The emperor's posthumous title usually contains piles of good words. For instance, the good words titled to the Yongzheng Emperor by the courtiers. 文武英明宽仁信义瑞圣大孝至诚显. It literally means be adept in both pen and sword, wise, mercy and kind, credible and persistent, of sagacity and secret, greatly filial, completely sincere, a brilliant man with universal knowledge. but the word to name the mausoleum was selected by the son. In other words, the posthumous title of the Yongzheng Emperor was offered by the courtiers and the world. The emperor, who is adept in both pen and sword, wise, mercy and kind, credible and persistent, of sagacity and secret, greatly filial, completely sincere, a man with universal knowledge. But the word Tai was a microcosm and a summary of a whole life of a father given from the bottom of the heart of a son. The word Tai was the naming word the Qianlong Emperor selected for the Yongzheng Emperor, which was an account of his father and the father in his heart. The character Tai is originated from the hexagram Tai, Tai Gua, of the I Ching, I Ching, the Book of Changes. What is the hexagram Tai? Its hexagram statements state as follows. 小往大来即亨，天地交则万物通也，上下交则其志同也。内阳而外阴，内健而外顺，内君子而外小人，君子道长，小人道消。Literally, it means advantages outgrow disadvantages. Things will go in a propitious and a smooth manner. All the creatures on earth benefit naturally from the dance of qi, yin and yang. The emperor and the courtiers are thoroughly unified, carrying the same ambition. The internal is yang and the external is yin. Perseverance is stored inside, while adaptability is demonstrated outside. Being an esquire inside, while a villain outside. The future development tendency of the esquire is getting better, while the villain vanishing. The hexagram statements are quite reflective to the whole life of the Yongzheng Emperor. 小往大来 was in a full accord with the fact that he was enthroned as the first prince, right? Besides, he was truly holding perseverance inside, while embracing adaptability outside. 内健而外顺. A gentleman inside, while a villain outside. 内君子而外小人. That is to say, his reigning approaches were essentially harsh. Hence, the Qianlong Emperor named the front gate of the Yonghe Palace as Zhao Tai Gate, same as all the other plaques of the Yonghe Palace. The plaque of the Zhao Tai Gate is also quite unique. Usually, the plaques in the Qing dynasty are written in two languages, Han Chinese and Manchu script. Very few are written in three languages at most, which can be seen in the Forbidden City. The plaques in the Yonghe Palace are four-language plaques, which contain Manchu, Han Chinese, Tibetan, and Mongolian script. The Han Chinese version was inscribed by the Qianlong Emperor himself, and the other three were presumably written by Zhang Jia, who took two. Well, now you may see the courtyard of the Yonghe Palace after entering the Zhao Tai Gate.